our lives really revolve around what our children are doing, whatever they're interested in, whatever they're doing, that's what we're doing. Whether it's softball tournaments all weekend or swim events that last all day, whatever it is that our kids are currently into, that's where we're at and that's what we're doing. Friday night at our house is pizza night. Kind of little traditions like that. Very much so about family. I used to remember when my children were younger and people with older kids used to try to warn me about when my children would become teenagers and how they would want nothing to do with me, and you'd be lucky to have them around, and so I kind of waited for that to happen, and it never happened. My kids, we do everything together still to this day. My grown adult children, they want to be with me, and my teenage children, they're not embarrassed of me yet, I don't think. But we still do everything together, and I think that was important growing up, is that we did everything together as a family, and every member of the family was important and valued, and I'm thankful that I never had to go through that. We left Las Vegas because my older two children were entering into the middle school, high school ages, and there were no schools that we knew of in Las Vegas that we would have felt comfortable sending our kids to. It was truly a safety issue. It was a much different picture than what it was here in Southern California, where the kids were walking through metal detectors to get to school, beatings and stabbings and fights at school were an everyday occurrence. And it just became clear to me, and living in Las Vegas was a completely different lifestyle, too intense, too fast-paced. We were just looking for a way to kind of escape that and get to somewhere where we felt safer as a family. And, choosing El Dorado Hills was because with that sense of safety involved, excellent schools, closely tight-knit community, safe. The safety, that was huge, and that's how we ended up here. 3 years ago today, actually, I was searching for my daughter who went missing. March 18th, 2008. She went to a local grocery store and she didn't come home. During the 8 days, I was thinking the worst, in which with each day, my desperation and my panic increased exponentially. Because the longer I went without any word from my daughter, I feared the worst, and the worst to me at that time was thinking that she was dead. And I thought that was the worst until she was recovered and we found out what had happened to her. And that was unbearable. I learned more than I ever wanted to learn about what domestic minor sex trafficking was, because it was at that time that we were made aware that our daughter was being bought and sold for sex. My daughter was located because somebody who knew somebody gave her missing persons information and the information that surrounded her disappearance to somebody that's associated with the Sacramento Special Task Force. We have a task force here in Sacramento that specifically investigates crimes, suspicions of children that are being sexually exploited. And within 24 hours, of this task force receiving the information, they had located my daughter, and they found her being advertised on Craigslist. She was located at a Fremont area hotel, but she was also trafficked in the Rockland area. I believe my daughter was targeted because she's cognitively and developmentally disabled. She's, at the time, was a beautiful 17-year-old physically, but had the mind of maybe a 10 or 11, 12-year-old, and was very vulnerable, very very naive, and it would have been very easy to lure her away. And I believe that that's why she was targeted. It was devastating. It was absolutely devastating. And what's sad, because at the time, there really wasn't much of a public awareness or a community awareness like there is now. And it's almost became where it was bad enough that she was victimized in this way, but almost in some public areas where it was as if it was this, it felt to me like this dirty, shameful thing that happened to us that nobody else could relate to and nobody else understood, and having to prove to people that my daughter was a victim. Because even within my own family members that refuse to talk about it because there's some dirtiness and that's involved with this, and getting people to understand that these girls are victims, that nobody is choosing this and they're having this forced on them. And having it happen with my own daughter. I mean, I have 3 daughters, and one of my younger daughter had a friend whose mom refused to allow her daughter to hang out with my younger daughter because she was afraid that her daughter would be exposed to prostitution, as if my daughter had willingly gone and willingly done this. And there's just such a stigma with this that it's sickening, that you have countless victims, and yet the world still hasn't really caught up to really viewing them through that lens. I think it's easier to choose to believe that the girls are choosing this, because if I have to believe that they are in fact victims, and that this is happening to them, and that children are being victimized in this way, and I don't do anything about it, what kind of an adult, what kind of a person does that make me? But if I can choose to believe, choose to ignore the facts, choose to ignore that they are in fact victims, and choose to believe that they're just doing this because they want to be doing it, then I guess in some way it can absolve me of any guilt for inaction, for not doing something. That's the only reason I could think of. Because if you look at the facts, and you look at the statistics, and you look at the majority of these girls are girls that have run away, girls that have been abused, and understand that it's not what they're running to, it's what they're running from, and understand that the victimization started a long time ago in most of these victims' lives, before they were ever sexually exploited for profit by a pimp. It started somewhere in their home. And understanding the psychology that goes along with it, but also the cycle of victimization and abuse that goes on and continues, that started a long time ago. I don't know how you could view him as anything else other than a victim. My daughter was a victim, but in the eyes of the law, she was nothing more than a witness and had no rights. And having to sit in a courtroom and feel unrepresented and watch the circus that went on before my eyes, where the court tried to focus on everything but the fact that the defendant was guilty, trying to paint a picture of my daughter being any less than the victim that she was, and having laws that are no more than a slap on the wrist if he was, proven to be guilty. And having to sit aside and listen to defense attorneys try to convince a judge that my daughter wanted this and that it was consensual, and that who's to say that the defendant isn't the true victim, and just absurd thing. It just seemed, that whole process seemed like it was surreal. Like, I cannot believe I'm hearing this. I can't believe I'm seeing this. I can't believe that this is happening, and that the victim has no voice. And what if the victim can't come forward? What if the victim doesn't have the strength right then and there to come forward and to testify and to be a witness? Then he walks. And so much about that process was just mind-blowing to me. He pled guilty to trafficking of a minor, and he got sentenced to 12 and a half years in federal prison, which seems like nothing. But my daughter didn't have to go to court. She didn't have to withstand a lengthy trial. She didn't have to sit across from her accuser, from her perpetrator, and recount in descriptive detail every horrendous thing that happened to her during the 8 days that she was missing. So there was a trade-off.
How's your daughter doing now?
She's doing well today. She is. She's doing remarkably well, and she's an amazingly resilient young woman. To have overcome what she's overcome in such a short period of time is amazing. But it doesn't mean that it's not a struggle. It doesn't mean that she still doesn't have flashbacks or nightmares. Because she does. But her strength amazes me. My hope is that by speaking out, no matter how uncomfortable it makes me, no matter how uncomfortable it makes other people, the more we speak out, the more awareness is raised, and the more people are educated about this crime. And what my hope is that someday we won't have to, because it won't exist any longer. It's an issue I'm extremely passionate about. When something like this hits home, I don't want to say you don't really have a choice, but you really don't have a choice. You have to do and say something. Because if we do or say nothing, then the criminals, the perpetrators, they win. And I'm not about that. I partnered with California Against Slavery because I firmly believe that there need to be stiffer penalties for the perpetrators of these crimes. They're hugely important to making it known that this crime, we take it seriously, and we need to take it seriously. Because when you have the laws that back that sense that, okay, this is a serious offense and there are serious consequences, and our state is getting behind that, then it sends a loud and clear message to the perpetrators that it's not going to be tolerated. Speak to anybody, go anywhere, talk to anybody, do anything to raise awareness and educate people on this crime, the hideousness of it, but most importantly, to open their eyes to the understanding that these girls are victims, not criminals, and encourage anyone and everyone to find out what they can do to join with me in this fight. If you want to continue to remain ignorant to what is going on in the world that you're living in, right where you're at today, that's your choice. But the fact is it is happening right here, right now, in the United States, probably in any city in which anybody lives. It's happening. Just because you don't know about it doesn't mean it's not happening. And that's why I encourage people to educate themselves. I hope it brings us around that corner to where we are in full awareness and full understanding of the impact that this crime has on not just the victims, but on our entire society, and how much we pay for this crime. And I'm not just talking in dollars and cents, and increase that level of awareness across our state that needs to take place, and for it to be taken seriously. My daughter wants to become a peer mentor. She wants to work with girls that have been trafficked. And that makes me happy that she's able to take something that's happened that's so painful and so tragic, and she wants to help other people, that she's thinking about other people. Amazes me. What happened to my daughter cannot be undone, but what passing of the initiative in 2012 can do can help make this wrong right. You can't put a price on a child's innocence.